Hey, Drew,
Yes.
do you think Cupid's arrow can make me fall in love with this book?
Oh Lord, I hope so.
I don't know. We'll see tonight. Hey everyone, welcome to another Valentine's Day-tastic episode of Empire Radio. I'm Jeremiah.
I'm Drew.
And we are back with a book review. The most anticipated book review of the past 5 years for Drew.
For me.
We're finally doing Lost
Mercy's almost.
Stars by Claudia Gray. I've been putting this off because I don't care about love stories. And Drew's like, it's the best book ever of all time. And we needed a Valentine's Day special this year, and we went with this one. Last year we did Dark Disciple. Go check out that book review. But
Oh yeah, that's what we did last year.
yep, I think last week we had Imperial interview with Maria, so go check that out. But we were going over like the top twos, and one of them is top two ships, and everyone thinks it's relationships at first. So I think next year for Valentine's Day, our special will be top 5 relationships in Star Wars. So if you wanna know about that, hit subscribe and wait a year, and then we'll be back with that.
And see you in a year, 12 months from now.
12 months. But before we get into today's episode, just wanted to say next week is our 5-year 300th episode celebration. Now we have something planned for that, but we're also thinking we could be getting an Andor trailer next week, because next week will be 2 weeks out from the start of season 2. So if that happens,
and then we haven't got a trailer yet. That's actually kind of crazy.
So I think I think we're gonna get it next week.
We better, dude.
Huh?
We better.
But
our luck, it's gonna come out this weekend.
Hopefully, then we can do it next week. But regardless of whether there's a trailer or not, we want extra voicemails sent in.
Voicemails.
So send in voicemails if you haven't ever sent one, or if you're a regular or you haven't done it in a while. Send one in. We'd love to hear from you for our 5 years 300th episode. Like if we could get like 20 voicemails or something, like we'll play them throughout the episode. Probably won't just wait till the end, however we want to do it or whatever. But we'd love to hear from you to celebrate our 5-year 300th episode. It'd be a lot of fun. So more the merrier. But that's all I think we really got for any news or any announcements or anything. But next month, middle of the month, we got EU March Madness with Andrew. And so we'll have him on for 4 straight weeks starting mid-March through mid-April. So that's exciting for that. We got an Imperial interview scheduled for 2 weeks, assuming that like in 2 weeks it's not an Andor trailer and we have to reschedule that. That would suck.
That a week out, then they put out the trailer finally.
Yeah, so
honestly, I'm kind of surprised. I forgot that it was that close. I'm kind of surprised we didn't get it during the Super Bowl. We got that Disney thing, and I thought it was going to be it, and it wasn't.
They released that before, and I've seen like screenshots of like him in that tuxedo thing. So I think he might be going to Canto Bite or something. I don't know, but I don't know. But this isn't. We're not here for speculations yet. We are here for a book review, Lost Stars. And as always, we'll go over our overall thoughts. So we'll start with you, Drew. Overall thoughts. Let's get it out of the way.
I mean, you don't need to know my overall thoughts.
No, go ahead. Go. Just say it, because now you can say it with spoilers and stuff, because you've always just had to say it's your favorite without saying anything. So why is it your favorite book of all time?
I think it's my favorite book of all time in Star Wars. I think it's because of one of it's for nostalgia reasons. It was the first Star Wars book I read.
Oh, so the first one you've ever read? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it was this one, and then what's it called? What's the name of that one that we want to read? That's not canon anymore.
Plagueis.
Plagueis. It was like this one and Plagueis I read around the same time. So I don't remember exactly, but it was one of the first ones. It was one of the first ones that Disney put out. I know that for a fact. And I really liked the story in between, like leading up to episode 4, and like viewing the story from characters that we haven't seen before, like viewing parts of when, like, they see when the Death Star gets destroyed from their point of view of someone who should have been on the Death Star but they weren't, but they knew people that were on it, or they saw how Leia's planet was blown up and they knew someone who was from that planet, and like saying how that was okay. Like viewing it from that perspective, I thought was really, really cool. And like it like I remember when I read this book the first time, like I was doing like family stuff and I could not put it down. Like we went to my in-laws and we are doing like a birthday or something, and I was sitting in the corner reading a book and everyone
What
thought I was a
nerd?
nerd. Exactly. Like they're like, Andrew reads? I was like, okay, chill. And I was just like so locked into this book. And so like this was my 11th time reading it through.
Dang, dude.
Yes.
Why'd you even have to read it? Like,
I didn't
you just
really
have
have to, but when I was so excited to read it again. So I feel like at this point I read it like once a year. Like I just go back to it. I love the relationship, the building of these characters from like they wanted to get off and they thought the Empire was like the best thing. And like seeing the corruption within, and only like certain point of views, certain people recognize the corruption, but then other people were just so locked in they didn't want to believe the corruption. And this book is very well written in the sense like you could see this happening right now. Like no matter what political time of I mean, I've been reading this book for how many years? When did this book come out?
2015.
Yeah, so every single time you can see corruption, and you understand what corruption could be in like government throughout that long ago, right? Like all the way now, like you can see different point of views of corruption and government. And so like I really thought it was well written for that. I mean, and this is one of the bigger Star Wars books I think we've read, right? Like
Bigger as in what?
like a lot.
Like pages?
Yeah.
It is page wise, but it's also larger print because it's a young adult novel.
Mm,
So
okay.
it's like if you're doing an audiobook, it's about the same as all the other
It's like
ones.
12 hours, oh, isn't it?
12 hours at regular speed. So that's about average, or maybe just a little less than a lot of
Okay.
them. But it's on average, same par as all the other ones.
Yeah. And then I like Carter Gray. I think she is one of the best Star Wars writers that we currently have. The other one that we read, the High Republic book, was like one of the best ones that High Republic books that we've read from her.
Oh, the last one we just did,
It wasn't the last one.
the phase 2, book 2. Is that Claudia Gray?
No. It was book
Well,
3, phase 1, I think.
no, she did book 5, which
Oh.
was which I said was the most well written one, but it was also a love story, and like
Yeah, similar. She does like a lot of like love stories, but the way it's written, I think, is really, really good. So I don't know. I think that's a lot of it, and like I mean I've even read like the graphic novel of this book
it's a
before.
graphic novel of this one.
Yeah, there's like an anime. Where's it? I have it.
Well, I know there was something with, because I looked up one of the characters, Nash Windrider,
Yeah, there's images of all of them.
and there's an black and white
Yeah,
image of him.
so there's like it's like an anime book, and it's
Okay.
a 3-part series. So it's like it shows you what the characters could look like, and it gives you more perspectives of that.
Oh, okay.
So, which I could have gave you that, and it would have been quicker
No,
for
that's
you to
because
read.
that's a redacted story, right? It's like very skim down.
Yeah, I would say so. It's not like much different, but it is definitely skimmed down. Like it's not describing
Right,
the places they're in and stuff like that,
right.
but it's still like written off by Claudia Gray, and it was like one of the first rumors of what like an anime show could have been. Like one of the like things that people were pitching was for them to do this as a show, as like an anime short show, but they didn't do that route. But yeah, I don't know. That's why I love it. I just love it. I don't know what it is. Every time I read it, I'm like, dude, this is. And I can guarantee you guys are listening, and you either haven't read the book or have debating it. I recommend doing it
Okay,
no matter
well,
what Andrew said or Jeremiah is about to
I'm
say.
well. First of all, we should put a disclaimer because
Correct.
there are some not so family friendly
It is
things
a
that
young
happen.
adult novel.
It's what's okay. That's the thing that makes me mad is it's aimed for middle school and high school age readers, but there is some very adult things going on in this book, language and description that like I was surprised.
Language.
I was just surprised in
Oh,
this
yeah.
book. So like we said it with Dark Disciple last time. If you're not a kid, you probably shouldn't. Like if you're a kid, you probably shouldn't read this. Like this is aimed, I feel like, at an older audience, like at some degree, to some degree, even worse than Dark Disciple. That's what I think. Like a bigger disclaimer, but I don't know. Just FYI, if you guys, if anyone listening wants to read it and has sensitivities to certain adult themes, just be aware of that. But
Yes.
so you want to know my overall thought? Well, what do you
Yes.
think my thoughts are? I want to know, like, do you think I like it? Do you think I have problems with it? What do you think?
I'm okay. So, what I'm going to say is I hope you love it, but I don't think that's the case. I think you like parts of the story and you can get along, but the love story overpowered a lot of it for you.
No, I wouldn't say that.
Oh, all right, here we go.
So
I'm so scared.
I can understand why you specifically would really like this book
Okay.
because it it's kind of like because it's based before and during the whole entire original trilogy, so it's like
Yes.
you have that context. That's like a nostalgia thing. So if you love the original trilogy,
Which I
like
do.
you're gonna like this book because the two main characters are present and all the main plot points of the original three movies.
Without necessarily interacting with the original characters,
Right.
which
And
is
so,
cool.
because like, so like, I liked that we got more like behind the scenes of things
Hmm.
happening during the original trilogy, and kind of like there are multiple places where these characters are present in scenes in the movie. They're just off camera, like they're literally standing there next to uh what's his name, Pyatt or whatever his name is,
Yeah.
like Admiral Pyatt or whatever his name is. Like you
Hmm.
see him, like he's talking to Vader in Episode 5, and Sienna is off screen, literally probably 10 feet
On
away,
deck.
and she's like listening to them talk. Like so,
Yes.
I thought that was really cool. I think it was cool how Thane was in the Battle of Hoth flying ships with. Like I think that's cool. Like they're all there, but it's kind of like the movie Forrest Gump, where Forrest Gump just happens to be at every single major like event in
Oh yeah. I
history.
didn't even think about
I'm
that.
like, how are they just happen to be in every single like thing, like one or both at the same time? Like it made the Star Wars universe really small for me, which I didn't really
Mm,
appreciate.
That's fair.
Um, and I think so. Like overall, I liked it. I actually liked their take on the love story.
Ooh,
Like
this is not what I thought we were going into today at
because
all.
they did it differently than you normally get. Because
Mhm.
Thane and Sienna, they from 8 years old knew each other and they grew up together. And it's like they grew into a romantic love with each other, which I feel like is not like a way that romantic love is portrayed in storytelling usually. It's usually like, oh, they're two adults and they meet and then
Yeah.
sure they might have a conflict and then they fall in love later on, but like it's kind of like more surfacey, where this is like they had a deep like platonic love and they knew each other very very well. They knew each other better than anyone could ever know anyone before they even romantically fell in love. And like I
They're like
appreciated
best friends that fell in love, essentially.
right, and it was there was just a there was the romantic love was actually convincing to me. Like it
Ooh.
made sense why they would fall in love and they had that relationship, which I feel like I said, a lot of other storytelling romantic relationships are very surfacey
Mhm.
and like it's just like they just write it in the story because they wanted that in the story,
Yeah.
but it's not really meaningful. This the love story was actually meaningful and like made sense to me, so like I
Mhm.
could appreciate that. Um,
That
but like
that's
my
crazy.
like the two like big issues was because this is a young adult novel, it's
Mhm.
very toned down in its writing, like
Mm.
with its way the dialogue is, and it's much more simple. The descriptions are much more simple, and we're used to reading all these adult novels, which are more in depth,
That's
more
fair.
descriptive. So it was like, especially like early on in the book when they're like kids talking, they're like this sounded like regular American kids talking. I don't know. It was just kind of weird to
Yeah.
me. And like so like at times because everything is written so simply, like I was wanting a more in-depth thing.
Mm.
I felt like this book could have been two or three books in an adult series and they could have gotten more in depth because like with their friends like Nash and stuff, who I thought like Nash was a very neglected character because he was from Alderaan and he saw his planet like get destroyed, and him having to deal with that like without having any emotion. Like I felt like by the end of the book when he's like justifying the destruction of Alderaan as a good thing in a sense for the galaxy, like we didn't really get a lot of how he got to that point.
Yeah. I think it leaves you to think about that more.
Right.
And I think that's what I loved about the book in a sense too, because like, okay, I didn't love that part, but I think it would be a really cool like anime show, like a like because of that, because if they could get into Nashville Riders like backstory or like how he was processing, like you
Yeah.
kind of get a little bit of it where he was just like in shock that he lost all his family, he lost all this, and like in in the movies, you don't ever really feel attachment to that planet.
Right.
Like Leia's planet gets blown up, and then that's like it. Like you think that's like a small piece of this puzzle, but that's a really dramatic thing if you really think about it. Like if our planet just we were off in ships and then they blew up Earth, like that's a huge thing. Like that's a big deal to just be like, all right, next planet, there's a lot of them. Like no, like that's a huge issue that like the movies can only show you so much of it, and that's why I loved when I first opened this book like and we were getting back into Star Wars. Disney was starting up again with Star Wars, and like we didn't know what we are gonna get to read this book. And I'm like, oh yeah, they killed millions of people in one shot,
Right.
and then like, so I love that part, and then you also love the part of like their perspective of when the Death Star got blew up, and they're like, no, they killed all these people that we cared about, that we went to school with, that we grew up with, that like, so I thought that was really cool how like the writer, like how she developed those like key points and made them a lot bigger thing than just like Luke blowing up the Death Star and winning the day, you
Right.
know? So that's why I think I love this story, because it kind of like brings more meaningfulness to the original three trilogy, which is why I think I love it. I love that part of it more than the love story. Like the love story is cool, but like that stuff I think is really, really sweet.
Right.
And I do think like there is parts of it like I want more of like Nash's thoughts, because you think that character is going to become good, but he actually is even more evil.
Right.
Like he's more like, if the Empire didn't do this, then what am I fighting for? Like if this
Right.
isn't a good thing, like this was all wasteful. I can't believe that this race, like that was a waste, because all my people died. So I have to make sure that the Empire is strong and good. So you see it, like even when the Empire fell, he was still trying to become part of the First Order, essentially. Like like that, I think that's such a cool concept and story, and like I really wish they would get back in, like if they could do something with his character, but
I I wouldn't be surprised if in the Mando movie or the Thrawn movies, when we get more Imperial people coming out of hiding,
if Nash Wooden Rider was one of the
I think
characters,
he could be,
that
because
would
at
be
the
so cool,
end of the book
dude.
he's in hiding with like a tiny Imperial fleet,
Yep.
like waiting to do something, and so, but but on that about like Nash and wanting more from Nash, what's interesting is every single scene in this book is either from the perspective of Thane or the perspective of Sienna.
Hmm.
So like I think that's why you can't do that much depth with other characters, because then it's coming from their perspective. And
Hmm.
so like I think so it's I liked how they did that, how no matter the scene, it's either from Thane's perspective or Sienna's perspective. And even the same scene, they switch perspectives, which I thought was pretty cool. Where like I thought that was cool that they do that. I'm like, why are they changing perspectives? Like they have like like the little space between in a chapter, like when it cuts to like another like perspective or whatever. It's like they did that over and over again, and so like I appreciated that, but like that also took away from building character development in the
Yeah.
side characters.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair.
but there's one major problem that I have with this book,
Oh,
Drew.
here we go.
It breaks Star Wars math.
Oh Lord.
They got the timeline wrong.
Okay, what?
So it is an established fact that A New Hope takes place 19 years after the fall of the Republic.
Hmm.
In this book, the Death Star is destroyed 16 years after.
Oh my gosh.
So it's
Okay.
off by 3 years. And
16. Oh yeah.
it's also established that the original trilogy is 4 years long,
Hmm.
and in here they've made it like 3 years long.
She's a little off, bro. Disney just got
So
bought. Like their math is a little
like
wrong.
I was so mad that like because it's
It's,
like they're 8 years old, and then
yeah.
it's another 8 years of them growing up. There's 5 years on Jelly Can, and then 3 years in the Imperial Academy, and so
Yeah.
there's 16 when they graduate. Or sorry, there's yeah, so there's 16, and then like I don't know, like I was just kind of like it was a
That's an
blatant,
easy fix, bro.
but it's like and I understand movies have precedent over books, movies and
Mhm.
shows, so like it's whatever. But I just thought it was kind of weird, unless I missed a time jump in the earlier chapters where it didn't. I missed it, but I got 8 years plus 5 years plus 3 years is 16.
Let's say you missed it. How about that?
And like the big issue with like the 3 year thing of like how long they made it the trilogy or the original trilogy is like there's only like a few months between episodes 5 and 6, which I think is a stretch because that means Lando, a nobody, joins rebellion and within like a few months becomes a general. Like
Hey, there were short people back then, though, bro.
I don't know. That was just the one thing every single time I was reading like time jumps and like I'm like this is
Yeah.
not
This
not my
math
Star
doesn't
Wars
math.
math.
So that was your biggest thing? I can live with that.
But so overall, I would say that I enjoyed the book. Like, there's a lot of scenes where I was like super like locked in.
That's not what I thought you were gonna say
Other,
at
but
all.
I feel like the first third or half, like before the Death Star stuff, I was kind of like, this is really like a kiddish, childish book. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It grows and then it gets really intense.
But like, they left the book wide open for a sequel.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know why they didn't do anything with it because
It's
it's
so
still
weird.
one of the most popular Star Wars books
Because
out
so
there.
we should mention that. So this book is part of like the journey to the Force Awakens.
Hmm.
Like it was an adult book, which is Aftermath, which I've kind of wanted to
I've read the
read.
first one.
Well, it only
It's
listed it as one book, so I don't know because that's a trilogy.
Yeah, there's a trilogy. I've only read the first one and I thought it was okay.
I don't know, but like it's that book plus this book plus like a junior novel and then like some like comic things
Hmm.
or whatever. So it was like all these stories like were set up and pointing to episode 7 and what they were doing in there. So like this one had the Battle of Jakku on it, which Rey is from Jakku and or was
Hmm.
left on Jakku, and so there's that tie-in. There's a tie-in of like
Well, they talk about the ship that crashed on Jakku too.
all those ships, right? Because there's all those ships because there's the Battle of Jakku, and you get that whole battle in Battlefront 2. You can actually play in that battle.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, and then there's like one moment where like Thane is like uh doing recon on Dakar. And he's like, "This is a nice planet. Maybe we could put this as a future base in the future." And then that's the base in the original,
Hmm.
uh, or the sequel trilogy is Dakar's where the base is. So there's like these things pointing to
Well,
the
yeah,
sequel
and like
trilogy.
the
So,
ship that we see Ray plummeting is the ship that they crash at the end of this book.
well, we don't know that for sure because
No,
there's multiple star destroyers that crashed.
the she's come out and said that was what it was supposed to be.
Oh, okay,
So
whatever.
take it as you will. I don't
Yeah.
know. Not that
Um,
it matters really, but it's just makes you tie it in more a little bit.
right. And I don't know. So we might as well there's a lot.
So
My
overall,
notes.
you liked it. You was it?
Overall, I enjoyed and liked it. I'm I'm not mad that there's worse Star Wars books I've read.
Yeah. Top
But
5,
no, no, no,
top
not.
10.
I don't know. I would have to sit down and
Do the math. On
do the Star Wars math on that one. But I'm not disappointed in reading it. How about that?
I'll take it.
You'll take it.
That's a dub for me. I thought I was gonna be like, this night's gonna be so stressful. I have to convince Jeremiah about this book. That's like my favorite. It's still my favorite book, by the way, you guys. Like I read it for 11th time, and I'm like, every time I read it, I'm like, I
Does
think it
she
had to
does
be.
does she ever do cons or anything like that?
Yeah, she was at Twin Cities Con when I went the first time.
Did you talk to her?
I did not talk to her.
Why?
I, because she was at a no, she wasn't at a panel.
She didn't have like a
No, no,
booth
no, no. No, I'm wrong. She was at Twin Cities Con last year,
that we
and
were at,
we
or
didn't no, the
oh,
year
2 years
before that
ago.
that we didn't go to because I wanted her to sign my book really bad. That's like a dream of mine is to meet her and actually talk to her. Because
Is that gonna be when you gonna start crying or whatever? Like me and her, you're
I
my
don't know. I'm not
favorite.
gonna. I'll just say this is my favorite Star Wars book, hands down. And
Okay.
I think a lot of it has to do with nostalgia too.
If I
But
ever meet her, I'm gonna ask her about Star Wars math. Why'd you screw up Star Wars math? I'm a writer, not a mathematician. Sorry.
yeah, sorry.
But we might as well try and go through scene or not scene by scene, but like just through the story. There's a lot that happened. I'm gonna skip over a lot of all the little details, but um, Thane Kyrell and Sienna Ree are from the planet Gel Yukon. It's hard for me to pronounce that word. Like the
Jellican.
Gel
Jellic.
Gel Yukon. Um, and so it starts up 8 years after the fall of the Republic, and the Empire comes to the planet, and they're basically, hey, we're taking over or whatever what it was. Like we're establishing the presidency because it says that Jellican is like on the farthest end of the Outer Rim. So like
Mm-hmm.
they're the last place the Empire can probably get to, and so they're right on the edge, probably really super close to like the ascendancy, like Thrawn ascendancy, like the Chiss ascendancy. Like they're maybe like close to them. I don't know, but they're 8 years old because or, yeah, 8 years old. Um, and so they're just kids. And Thane, he is so there's kind of like two groups of people on this planet. You have the people that came like 500 years prior and established, you know, a civilization on the planet, and those people were the ancestors of Sienna Ree. And then like 100 years or 150 years prior to that, like the second waivers came, and those were like the rich people that came kind of, and that's Thane Kyrell's ancestors. And so the two groups of people live together, but they're also like different culturally and different values, and kind of have a conflict of interest between each other, but they're still
They
living on
don't
the planet.
interact really.
Right. And so when the Empire comes, like Sienna and Thane, that's when they kind of cross paths because Sienna's getting bullied by some other kids. Thane goes and rescues her, or goes to rescue her, and then as the fight's going on, Tarkin is there. He's on the planet. He's like the official like Grand Moff. That's like, congratulations, you're part of the Empire now, type of thing. But he goes and he actually stops the fight. Um, and they're Sienna and Thane are like, we love the Empire, we want to be pilots, we're excited to join the Empire or something like that. And Tarkin's like, really? Well, why don't you come check out my Lambda class ship and I'll give you the tour to like. I was like, that is really cool that like because like they like discussed things or whatever, like, and Thane has made a comment that was like very strategic, and Tarkin was like, that's some good insight, kid, keep it up. And so like that's their first interaction with like a starship and the Empire and Tarkin and all that stuff. So that's kind of cool. But
And
from
Thane is like really into starships, so like he knew it by the sound of it. He knew what it was,
oh right,
like
there's
when it
that.
flew over their heads and stuff when they're landing. Like
Yep. And so then it's kind of like a quick montage, kind of like of them growing up together because they were from two different family groups that are now, but they're like best friends. And it's just kind of them doing things as kids, and they ended up learning how to like fly ships on their own, like on this planet. And they would fly together in the same ship, and that's where their friendship like really grew, of like how they knew each other so well because they were flying with each other and they could just respond back and forth, and um, like they just knew each other, like they trusted each other. And then they also had like the fortress, which is kind of like their secret hideout in this side of a cliff or whatever, like a little like cave thing. And they go there and hide out. We find out Thane, he gets abused by his father, and so like he goes to the fortress and spends time with Sienna to like be away from home. Um, and so it's just like this cool friendship between these two growing up, and then they're like trying to like get into like the Imperial Academy at some point. Like they're just trying to like go through the program as a kids to like get recognized, and they're so good at what they do like academically and whatnot that they actually get accepted into the Imperial Academy on Coruscant, which is like one of the top ones in all the galaxy, obviously, because it's the capital. And so they both go to Coruscant, and that's the first time they ever leave the planet. And I was like, dang, this is kind of cool. And so we see from the perspective of like Imperial cadets, like what they had to go through in their training to become Imperial officers. So they weren't like troopers or anything. They're just in school to be officers and pilots and that kind of thing.
And like we've seen like a version of this like in the Clone Wars show. Or was it Clone Wars? Or was
Which
it
one are you referring to?
like the Imperial? No, it wasn't Clone Wars. We saw a version of this like in Rebels, right? When what's his name, like
Well, we see
went
like a little bit of
undercover.
like cadets, like Ezra with his buddies.
Mhm.
Um, some of it, but there was like more like military focus, whereas the officers are more like about leadership
Yeah.
and non-combat. Even though they're all trained in these things, um, it wasn't like infantry stuff. It was more Navy, like where they were like on Star Destroyers and
Mhm.
being pilots and stuff. And so, um, and what's cool is Thane and Sienna are like both the top two students in the whole academy of their class. And every project, every task, every assignment goes to like their overall ranking, and they're both going back and forth for the 3 years, um, just trying to compete for first place. And um, I was like, dang, they're like, because like the thing is like they're like from this backwoods planet that no one's ever heard of, like,
Mhm.
and you have all these rich people. Like some people were like, the child of some imperial senator or whatever, and like they're supposed to be like the top of the class, but like these backwoods, so like people like didn't like them or whatever, and but they just kept going. I thought one of the cool scenes was like the race scene with the speeder bikes
Mhm.
when
They got
they're
hooked up together.
they have to like go through like the hoops or whatever in like Coruscant, like they're racing through Coruscant City,
Mhm.
and they're the best pilots, the best whatever, and they crash into each other, but they get stuck together, so they have to like go through these rings together. But like they're trying to figure out how to fly these things that are stuck together. But because they know how to fly and they know how to like balance each other and anticipate each other's movements, like they did the impossible together, and they had to split the score at the end. I
Mhm.
thought it was kind of lame. They should have got full points, but whatever.
Yeah,
But
whatever.
you don't really want to argue with your superior officer in the
Yeah.
academy. So they're just like having fun being students. Now, what I thought was interesting was when there are kids on Jellycan, um, it seems like Thane was more critical of the Empire and Sienna was more like skeptical, or sorry, was more like pro uh, Empire. But then when they get to school, like Thane was more like he was like free from Jellycan. He was like new world. Like he was more like excited about being in this program. And Sienna was a little more like, I don't know about this. Like things are different. I don't know. Blah blah blah.
I
And
think
then
it's I
like
think
eventually
yeah,
like things go the opposite way where
they flip back.
they flip back the opposite. So I thought it was. I was like, I knew that one person goes to the
You
rebels,
as you're
and
reading this, you can tell that one of them's gonna swap.
right, and I knew that
Or
was him because that's just what you said. You told me before, but like I
oh,
didn't know which one. So
mm,
like I was waiting. So when I saw these like flipping, like before anything big happened, like there any one of these two could flip. I'm like, who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Like I didn't know, so it was kind of
That's kind of
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't spoil that for you.
Because I'm sure you did at one point, but I didn't care about the stupid book, so like I'm not gonna remember what Drew said. So like I never remember what you said.
I don't think I did, but either
Um,
way, I'm proud of myself for not spoiling a book that I've read
right.
10 years ago, dude.
But what was a major like point of conflict that happened was there's this major assignment where everyone has to like take spare parts from like a crash ship and like build like a plasma cannon or whatever they called it.
Yeah.
Like that's one of your things as like an imperial officer is like you crash your ship, you have no weapons, you have to use parts from your ship to like build a weapon. And so this is like one of the biggest projects that they have to have in this 3-year program. And like, you know, they're both at the top of the thing. And like, if you get a bad score or whatever, like you can't recover type of thing. Like you're just middle of the road or something after that. And so they build their things and it's like everyone has to present. And the imperial officer, like their head, whatever, is like going through testing each one, seeing how innovative people were. And they get to Thane Kyrell and his doesn't work. And everyone's shocked. Sienna, she's super shocked. Like how I know this isn't his strong suit, but like he knows enough, so like at least make something that shoots a little bit or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they open it up, and the wires were cut. Push a button, bum bum bum. It's like who was it? Like who did it? And the immediate evidence was that Sienna sabotaged him.
And at this point, they're tied for first place of their
Yeah,
class.
you're
Like
right.
they're the best people, and so
And
everyone thinks that they're best friends, so they're not gonna like do this to
sabotage each
each
other.
other. So it's like a big drama.
Right. And like, because like the teacher officer is like, who had access to this room before, blah blah blah, and like they asked the droid that was there. Oh, the only person that was here was Sienna Ree, and it's like no one believe what no like, and she can't believe it, and it's like she denies it, and Thane doesn't believe it was her, but like the evidence says that, and so then they have um their friend Jude. So she's one of the roommates of Sienna. Like she's like the nerd, like
She's like a droid in a human body,
yeah, the
essentially.
super nerdy droid. Like she's just like whatever. So she like they ask her like, can you like hack into the system and like get information? And she's like, there's evidence that it was someone else, but like it doesn't like I don't have enough clearance or whatever to like even get further. Like blah blah blah, and it's like and so like they presented to the officer like the leadership that like someone else
But
meddled in this, but
it
like they're
made it
like
look like he
did it himself.
did it himself, but
So
then
that's
blame it on her.
right. And like the officers are like, well, there's no like way to prove anything of who did it, so you both get zeros or something like that.
Yeah.
But then like with Jude, she like hacks into the system and she's like, well, the trail ends at like the office of student affairs or whatever, or like to imply that the school purposely screwed Sienna and Thane apart so they wouldn't be getting the points. That's what Thane's interpretation is. Like they screwed us over. Like the school is conspiring against us, and it's because we're these backwater students. We're not the kid of a
Mm-hmm.
senator. We're not whatever. We're not some rich kid or whatever. Like they don't want us to succeed. And Sienna is like, no, Thane, that's stupid. You can't believe that. Like the Empire wouldn't do that. They want us to succeed. And they had a huge fight, and they stopped talking to each other. And I think it was for like 2 years or whatever. Like this is a 3-year program, and like for like the last 2 years,
It was a long time.
they did not talk to each other. Like they passed each other in hall, they whatever, but they didn't really weren't social anymore. And like it was super sad. They had this big fight, and then um, towards the end of the 3-year program, like there's the big Imperial Ball at the Imperial Palace, which was the Jedi Temple, and so they select few students get to go to that, and Thane and Sienna, and then like all like the main other characters like Nash, Jude,
They're roommates.
Kindy, like yeah, they get invited, and um like Sienna goes like in this fancy like dress or whatever, and Thane goes up in like the Imperial officer uniform to like. I thought it was lame that like all the girls they go get like these cool fancy dresses, but then all the guys just show up in like their normal like Imperial uniforms. Like
Yeah,
I get it because like people in the military do that now, or like
they'll get married in their
married in
uniform,
like yeah,
their
like
dress blues.
so I get it, but I was just like, come on, Thane, you could have done better. I don't
I mean,
know.
that's what they do though.
I know.
It made it make it feel like we understood that
Like you are
because
proud to be an American. Like this is how we do
yeah,
it, but it's the
yeah,
empire, so I don't know if we should
yeah.
be proud. um, but they see each other and they start talking, and they kind of wanted to like make things better, but Thane was still thinking that Sienna should apologize to him, but she was like, because he apologized for yelling at her, but like he was hoping she was going to apologize for not believing him, and she's like,
Mhm.
no, I'm not going to believe you, like no, I'm not going to apologize for that, blah blah blah. And then Nash, when Ryder shows up drunk, and he's like blah blah blah, it's like, I can't believe you guys had this big fight, blah blah blah, like of course it was student affairs that like screwed you guys over. They don't want you guys to succeed, you're from some backwater thing. And they both, Sienna then realized like Nash was right, meaning that Thane was right. Because there was like some other little information that he said or whatever that like was more evidence that Thane was right. And so they kind of blew up a little bit, and then like at the end of the party they get back together and they watch the sunrise and they become friends again.
Mhm.
Like everyone else went out to go party after to the after parties, and they just like hung out at the palace until the sun rose, and they were friends again. And like then like they graduated, and then like um they got their assignments. And so Sienna was given a position on the Devastator with his Darth Vader's ship, Star Destroyer. I was like, oh dang, like she's like that's like the top ship, like whatever. And then, but then Thane gets assigned to a secret military base, and I was like, a secret military base? Oh, I wonder what that is. And so he gets sent to the Death Star, which like with like Rebels and like Andor and all this stuff, like the way they presented the Death Star like being secret was like very secret. Like very few people knew about it. Same with like uh Thrawn Alliances, the one with Vader in it.
Mhm.
Like it's very 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 secret. But I feel like when Thane goes to Death Star, like there's already the name the Death Star. Like it was like almost like common knowledge. I don't know. And then like I knew there was a lot of people on the Death Star, but
Bro,
like
there's a lot of people.
it was seemed like it was a lot less secret than they were letting on in the other show. So it's like,
But you got to think those are all people that are on the Death Star though.
well, I know, but like,
Cuz like she didn't know that the Death Star was a thing right away.
right, but then she goes there like almost right away with like,
Well, she she's on Vader's
but
ship, of
that's like the thing. It's
course.
like it's like a secret station, but all these destroyers go there, which we knew from Rogue One when we see those the Star Destroyers there, and they're super tiny compared to it. But
Mhm.
like, it just seems like it wasn't as a secret in this book as it is in other media.
Mhm.
Um, and what I think is should be noted, because this book came out in 2015, like this is before The Force Awakens. This came out like the summer before The Force Awakens. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is before The Mandalorian, before Rebels is like only like one season in at this point.
Yep.
Like so at times I felt like the book established things about canon that would contradict future projects. Kind of, I don't know. It's kind of hard to. I just kind of got that vibe where like things didn't fit exactly. I didn't really write any of it down, but like,
But isn't that with a lot of these Star Wars books though? Like the Ahsoka one before we got Tales.
well, right,
Like that established a lot of canon and then it kind of just went away.
well, right, but like I just felt like she had this freedom to write the story, but like,
They needed to get content out. They needed to
but it was without
pay
like
bills.
it was just kind of like the sequel trilogy. It wasn't really fully planned out from the beginning. Like they established this book without like having the future projects in mind, which
hmm
weren't ever like even consideration. Like Andor probably wasn't a
Rogue
thing in.
One wasn't a thing.
Well, Rogue One was on the, because that was a year later after
True.
Force Awakens.
That's fair.
But like I don't know, I just had that little vibe here. I'm reading things. I'm like, that's not really the most accurate, but okay, whatever type of thing. But whatever, we gotta keep going. But what's is interesting is because Ciena is on the Devastator, she was on the Devastator when they tracked down Princess Leia at the beginning of Episode 4,
hmm
and so she's on that ship when they capture the Tantive 4. Um, there's the scene in the movie where C3PO and R2D2 are in an escape pod, and it goes, and the Imperial officer like scan that pod, like, oh, there's no life form, and like, oh, it must have short circuited. Well, Ciena is literally standing behind the camera, basically hearing him say that. And so like I went back and looked at this scene, like, is there like a female officer anywhere in this scene? And like you don't see it. Same with the Vader scene in Episode 5. Like I you see the people sitting down there, but you can't really see any of their faces. But like one of those people sitting at a computer was Ciena, which like cool. So she's on there, um, and then she gets to go to the Death Star. Later on, and it's like, oh, Thane's he's stationed on there, blah blah blah. And so they saw each other on the Death Star. I can't remember. Like they kind of
They figured out
briefly,
how to see each other, yeah.
so they whatever, but like
Because it's like a city, so it
right,
was like hard to. They
right,
figured out how to. But something that you didn't mention is that Dane's roommate, that dude, what's his name?
Nash,
Nash Windrider is on the ship with Ciena.
right, and what
Ciena's roommate is on the Death
Death
Star.
Star Jude.
Yes.
Um, Now, so something that I kind of was a little disappointed by. Um, so obviously, Episode 4, A New Hope, takes place over the span of just a few days. But like, Ciena, when she's on the Devastator, like Tarkin hollow calls in, and like she's excited to see Tarkin because she met him when she was a kid, and he's like sees her through the hologram and sees that she's like happy to see him, but like he's like, "Do I know you?"
Yeah.
And she's like, yes, Grand Moff Tarkin. I am from Jellucan. I met you when I was 8 years old." And he remembered her, and
hmm
he had a smirk, like, "Oh, like me showing you that ship actually worked. Like it got you to join the thing, and now you're like on Darth Vader's ship. Like that's cool." So like like if the Star Wars math was done correctly, and this was 3 years before Episode 4 was supposed to happen, I thought it would have been cool if like Tarkin kind of mentored her a little bit, like
hmm
going up, but like he only had a few days left and then he died.
hmm
But I thought that would have been cool if like we saw him like teach her something and like give perspective on things to like help form her alliance to the Empire more, but we didn't. But anyway, so yes, so Ciena and Thane are both on the Death Star when Alderaan is destroyed, and everyone's shocked. No one expected that to happen. Like, no one understood what was going on. Like, Nash Windrider, he's there when it happens. He sees his planet destroyed. Like, he didn't even know it was happening until it happened in that instant. And he's not allowed to like show any negative emotion at all. Like, if he'd had any negative emotion, like, he would have been like
Killed
or like
disappeared,
whatever. And it's like, so it's interesting that even though like from Ciena's perspective, like, it's very like the Empire is good. Like, they don't do bad things. Like, they're helping the galaxy. And so, like, everyone processing, they have that perspective of the Empire. We're good. We're doing good for the thing. But like, they knew that if they showed displeasure, that it would have been like possible death for them, which is interesting. That like they understood that right away. That's why he knew he wasn't allowed to have emotion. Like, because it was interesting how when they were in school, one of the things that they were taught was that there's no longer individual planets. There's just the Empire. So like, you're not supposed to have
You're not like
having
supposed to want
allegiance
to
to your
go back to Jellican, or you're not supposed to want to do certain
right,
things.
because you're not supposed to see individuality. You're supposed to see a cohesive unit. And so to show emotion because Alderaan was destroyed is to show a disallegiance. Is that a word? Like, you're questioning your allegiance to the perfection of the Empire, which I thought was interesting.
Are you gonna get into Nash's brother at all?
I mean, Thane's brother.
Oh yeah, Thane. Sorry.
Well, Thane's older brother, who's 4 years older, was in the
jerk.
academy,
And he sucked.
and he's like, whatever. He's just like, whatever. And then we
But
don't really get much information to him until the very last chapter. So, like,
true.
he's not really there. He's just kind of like a mediocre officer, or whatever he
Yeah.
was. Like, he wasn't. They gave him. I think at the end of the book, like, he's just given like basic things to do, like nothing really pressing, but like he gets it done, and it's like he's just faithful still. But I don't know,
Yeah. Delvin, he was pretty much just a bully to his younger brother and hated the first waivers, which is so like he there's like certain times where at one point his younger brother is like higher ranked than he is, but then he would tell his parents back at home earlier that he was already higher ranked. And
oh yeah, he was like way better than he was actually.
yeah.
But
And then at the end, it kind of matters because it shows you his relationship with his old roommate, because he's like the only one faithful. And then then his older brother is still being punished by his old roommate, kind of.
funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just kind of there a little bit, but nothing too pressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so everyone's like just super confused about the whole Alderaan. Everyone's shocked. Thane's shocked, Sansa's shocked, everyone's shocked, but they don't know what to say. And kind of like when it comes to Ciena, one of her things is with her being like an original inhabitant of Jellican. Like, one of their things is like, you make an oath, you keep it. Like, no matter what happens, like, you make an oath, you're faithful to that oath till you die. And so every single time the Empire does something evil, she tries to understand it through a justification of why it was good or why it was necessary. And one of the things that helped her process Alderaan was her friend Jude, who was basically like, I don't get it either. But the best thing I can conclude is that this was done to stop the rebellion. And, sure, a million, however many million people died on Alderaan is terrible, but ultimately, if the rebellion stops, it will save countless lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's like a good thing because it's actually the net. There's no net loss or whatever. It's like you're
Well, and they
net
were
positive.
told that like all the rebellion was on that planet essentially too.
Like the leadership, like mainly because
Yes.
Leia Organa and Bail Organa, like the Organa family was like, because like we do see Leia at the ball, like it was cool, 16-year-old, and like Thane dances with her like in the ball,
Uh
like
huh.
this. It's kind of funny.
Which is pretty cool.
Um, but like they knew that like she like prior to the ball, like she was a junior senator and she delivered some message against to the Senate about like the atrocities of the Empire or something like that. So like, um, so anyway, Sienna was like, that's like her first justification of what the Empire did was a good thing, was do that council with her roommate Jude. Um, and so throughout the book, that's how Sienna processes everything. It's very much there's reason for this. The Empire is doing this, and the rebels are terrorists. They're evil. They're bringing death, and like there's like the idea of the Clone Wars was like we don't want another Clone Wars, and one of the things that Sienna, like one of the later on in the book when like Thane and Sienna meet up again, like she's like the Empire brings stability and it's preventing another Clone Wars where billions and billions and billions of people were killed. Like we're stopping that. We keep preventing that from happening. So that's her like all her continual justification.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And it took her off of a backwater planet and made her someone.
right.
That's a big thing.
Yep. And so then during the events of the original movie, episode 4, so Sienna is not at the Battle of Yavin, but she's monitoring it uh,
Mm-hmm.
through whatever like reports and stuff from what was going on. But Thane was also sent to Dantooine to recon it with his ships or whatever, because from episode 4, what does Leia say? Oh, the rebels are on Dantooine. Like, so the Empire is just following up on that. Was there any evidence of there? Are there any rebels there? And so he's over there. Death Star gets destroyed. Sienna's like, we have no signal from the Death Star. Like, we don't know what happened. Like, the rebels, they must have took out communications or whatever. No one knew what was going on. Communications were all screwed up with Thane trying to understand, like, getting reports of what happened, and like no one knew what happened. And so there's just kind of like that, like no one knows what's going on. They couldn't believe what happened. Um, and then, which is kind of interesting, which I never really thought about, was because the Death Star was destroyed. Like there were no like Star Destroyers or larger ships that are available, and so Sienna, for some reason, with another officer named Baris, are told to get on a ship and go to where the Death Star coordinates were to go pick up Vader.
Mm-hmm.
He's just floating around in space. no, no, he doesn't. I guess his starship didn't have hyperdrive in it. So they go to pick up Vader, and he's basically like, all right, now that I'm on the ship, you guys are sitting in back. I'm flying us back home. Like, you just stay in the back until we get back to the Devastator or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. And then Thane, he's like told to go to this one planet or whatever to like be stationed. And it's like a planet that was like in like a hollow show or whatever of like there's like spice runners and like pirates and oh it's kind of cool, like a lot of fun. And like, he's excited because he watched all these like space shows where like this planet was like cool, like old Western type feel, like fun. I don't know, like Westerny. I don't know. That's how I kind of pictured it. And he gets there and it's like super boring and blah blah blah. And he's just going on patrols with his tie to like scare the locals with like the sound of his ship type of thing. Blah blah blah. And he's just kind of like bored. And um, at one point, he sees the Empire using slaves to do manual labor.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot for him. Like he didn't understand that. He was like so against it. Like these, like there's laws against this, against slavery. He's seeing people getting beaten. Like people are just like watching these people get being suffering or whatever. And like he ends up like calling Sienna, like FaceTiming her basically, and like he's like, our call is being monitored, so we kind of gotta talk about things. So he's kind of like doing like a secret like coded language of like being displeased with the Empire, and she kind of responded with like a similar thing. So like he interpreted it as, oh, she's on the same board with me that like the Empire is kind of evil and not good. And so he's like, okay, we're on the same page. And so he ends up defecting and leaving the Empire, believing that Sienna would defect with him.
Yeah.
And she did not defect. And so they weren't, because the coded language was not clear enough, they were not in agreement fully. And so he disappears, and Imperial officers question Sienna about Thane. And she's basically, that doesn't seem right. Like maybe he had friends that were killed on the Death Star. Like maybe
He was having
he was
problems.
having problems like understanding that, blah blah blah. And the superior officer just saying was like, normally he would be kicked out of the thing or whatever, or like executed or whatever. Like he'd be severely punished. He would not be allowed to be any in the imperial ranks of any sort. But because we lost millions of, so we got two different numbers in this book. One person said 1,000,000 people were killed. Another person said 2,000,000 people were killed on the Death Star. So like I noticed that, like,
But I feel like that was on purpose to show like they didn't even know how many people they
well,
lost.
right, but like it's still like two different numbers because no one ever knew because it was a secret base. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't like on the like the front page, like, oh, this many people died on the Death Star. Like people didn't even know what the Death Star was. Probably even through the galaxy, throughout the galaxy, like
Still.
still.
Well, because
Um,
the Empire also doesn't want to get blamed for that planet getting blown up. Because then there'd be a bigger outrage.
right, and so the officer is like, well, because we lost so many people on the Death Star, we are short-handed
We
militarily
need
wise.
him.
Like, so she's like, well, I think I know where he is. He probably went back to Jellycan. Like, and he's like, well, so the officer's like, well, you can go back and get him back, bring him back. If you can bring him back, you know, he'll have a punishment, but he'll be allowed to stay. We just got to get him back on board. And so she goes to Jellycan, and he's like living there for like, I think he was there for like 2 weeks or something. They said, when he's like almost no money. He's like living in some crappy apartment above some store or whatever. Like I just
Mhm.
think of like some janky whatever. And there's something that I never knew about. So there was a I forget what they call it, like a beard suppressant. Like they don't shave in Star Wars. They just like, I think it's just like a, must be like a lotion or something that like stops the hair from growing, because it says like his beard suppressant wore off, and he was getting like facial hair. So
I
it's
think
like
it's I think it's like a pill.
pill. I didn't really say what it was, but I think it was a beard suppressant. I had it in my notes actually somewhere. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I was like, oh, that's kind of
It's
kind of
kind of
interesting.
Interesting. What's the opposite of that? That's what I need.
Yeah, I have a beard suppressant. That's what they called it. So
Yeah. They didn't really describe how it worked, but
so he didn't shave. They don't shave. They just have a beard suppressant. Um, so that's kind of funny. But so when Sienna finds him, he's like, "I knew you'd come and find me. We're on the same page." And she's like, "No, I'm here to bring you back." And like they love each other so much that like they can't hate each other for any reason. Like they understand, he understands why she wants to stay now. She understands why he wants to defect. And there's like the whole thing of like her oaths. And like he's like,
well, and the big thing you forgot to mention too is that her sister died when she was younger.
"Oh, well, right." So she has this
So,
thing where she experiences life to the fullest, and whenever there's like a major moment, she says like, "See through my eyes," to like imply that she's living a life for her sister to see.
mhm. But I
And
think that's important too because her oath is also to her sister
well,
to do the right things, to do what she thinks is the right things.
I guess it's kind of like briefly mentioned at the beginning of the book when she asks like, "Why do you say that?" Like when they're flying and it's a beautiful sunset, she'll like say, "See through my eyes" or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but like she has her oath to the Empire, but then she also has like an oath of loyalty to Thane as being like her best friend type of thing.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Well, what do you do when you have two oaths?" And this is kind of like where she's like in a dilemma, and she's like, "Well, I'm choosing to be loyal to you right now." And
Mhm.
they have a sleepover, and then she's like, "I am gonna go back to the Empire and report you, but you have 1 week before I report you. So you have 1 week to leave Jellyucan, and I'm
Find a new
reporting you, and
place.
you're on your own. Like what they do, if you stay here and they track you down, that's on you." But what she actually does is she chooses Thane over the Empire, and her report is that he, because of depression from losing friends from the Death Star, he took his own life on Jellyucan. And like I saw his body, but based on rituals on the planet, like it's gonna be his body is gonna be taken to the sky, and the birds are gonna eat him basically. So there's no evidence that his body anymore. And they bought her story, and so everyone thinks that Thane died on Jellyucan, and so no search for him. His friends believe that he's dead. So that happens. Um, and so after this, we get like a little jump ahead. I think it was like 7 months or something like that. Thane joined like a smuggling crew or whatever, led by Loragra. What was her name? Loragra,
Yeah,
a
I think so.
Wookiee,
Yeah.
a super old Wookiee lady. So old, she's all white. Um,
It's kind of cool.
Kind of cool. And so she's like the most like loving, motherly, grandmotherly person that just loves Thane and the rest of her crew, and they just kind of like smuggle things, not to like make profit, but to like bring relief to people being oppressed by the Empire type of thing.
Mhm.
So he's helping pilot the ship and take care of the ship and do stuff with that, blah blah blah. And there's one point where they have to go to this planet, but there's a giant hurricane, and Thane is like, "I got this. I'm the best pilot in the galaxy." And he like is able to fly through this hurricane, like through the eye, and then like land in the middle of the thing, and like the most impressive thing ever. And there's another guy on the planet that's there doing relief or whatever, and they sit down at the cantina or type of thing. He's like, "Hey, good flying out there, blah 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 blah." And Thane's like, well, what's your name? My name is Wedge Antilles.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is pretty cool.
Wedge is there, and they're just talking to everyone. Like, Wedge is like, we should talk a little bit more private. Like, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm with the Rebel Alliance. We need pilots like you. And he's like, Thane's like, no, I don't want to do that. Are you kidding me? Blah, blah, blah. And then he goes back and talks to Loagra, whatever her name is. And he's like, I think I got to join, type of thing. And she's like, no, I need you. But she's like, but you're doing a good thing, so I can't really stop you. And so
Yeah.
he goes and joins the rebellion, not because he agrees with the rebellion, but because he hates the Empire, which I think is an interesting perspective that Thane
Yeah.
has, where he doesn't agree with the Rebel Alliance. He just believes,
Because they killed his friends on the Death Star.
right. He still
Because we
sees
got
them
to
as
mention
terrorists.
that the his friend on the Death Star was that died was what's her name's roommate
Oh, Jude. Jude was on the Death Star
when it blew
when it
up.
was destroyed, as well as other friends he just knew that were
Yeah,
and were not
but like
mentioned.
Druid was the reason why like it kind of all tied together for both of them and why they had that call. One of the reasons why they had that call originally.
Yep. And
So
so, um, so that happened. So he's recruited to the Rebel Alliance through that event, those events. Now, at the same time, like during around the same time, Sienna is on a mission where there's an Imperial outpost on a big presence on some planet, but then a volcano on the planet erupts and is basically destroying everything. And she's sent in there to like go extract the last of the Imperial troopers that are like stuck on a roof or whatever, and they're about to die. Like it's super hot, they're all burning, almost dying, and she's able to get in there and get those troopers. Or I should say that she was on the ship. She was kind of like directing. They get those troopers, but then in the distance, she sees some of the locals also on the roof. Like the last, like they missed like the civilian transport off the planet. They're just trapped on the roof, and she's like, "Well, we gotta go get them." And the pilot's like, "Well, I can't fly. There's like this updraft. There's like all these crazy like whatever. I can't do this." She's like, "Well, I got this." So kind of interesting. Thane he flies through the hurricane because no one else can. He's able to do it now, and she's flying the ship in a way where no one else can fly, but she's able to do it. She gets in. They are able to save the civilians last few minutes before like it's completely destroyed. Like and it's like the locals and the stormtroopers were like celebrating like this. Like we did something good. Like we survived.
mhm.
Like the ship could barely it was beyond capacity of like weight limit type of thing. They all almost died, but Sienna was able to do it, and she gets back to base or whatever, and her superiors confront her that like what she did was wrong, and she didn't understand why. But then the only really thing that the superior said was like, "Well, you didn't go through chain of command." Which so she's like, and so in her mind, it's like, "Oh, what I did wasn't wrong in the Imperial eyes. It was just I didn't follow protocol first, like call in, but hey, can I go get them type of thing."
Mhm.
And so like
That was her justification.
that was the justification. Like even like from the Emperor, like they didn't even condemn, like they didn't explain it further. So it's like she didn't see them say that saving those lives was wrong. Like
Mhm.
it was implying, like, oh, they still agree that what I did was good. I just didn't follow protocol. And so that was like the only thing like on her permanent record was like this little thing for like later on when she was getting promotions, like, oh, there's a little thing on thing, but like, well, whatever, that's just barely anything. That was just like a learning experience type of thing. Um, so it's again a justification of like what she did was right. The Empire approved it, but like they would not be against this because they're pro everyone. Um, so
It does a really good job, you guys, on like explaining how someone could be corrupt. on the Empire side and still think they're doing good,
Right. And I think
which is really cool because like we don't see that perspective of the Empire ever, you
right.
know?
And I think what this book does well is that most people in the Empire like
They're not all bad
seem
people.
no, like they seemed like the default was that they were good people. But
Hmm.
like one of the things though, like I feel like they neglected with like Sienna's story was like showing more of the missions that she was involved, like her destroyer was involved with. Because it's like it seems like they barely did anything, so it would imply like she never saw the Empire do bad things because she's on a star destroyer. Like
Hmm.
now, if you're a trooper on the ground and like living like with the civilians, like we'll see later on with her on Jellycan, like what happens to her family, like unless you're like on the ground seeing how it actually is happening out there, like if you're stuck on a ship going through your routines, like yeah, that ship might go and like take out some Rebel Alliance ships that were like tracked down, like, oh, these are terrorists. We did a good thing. Like, you don't see the corruption.
Well, and especially on Vader's ship, Vader's not going to planet like on the ground, you know.
Right.
And
So
she's like super high command, so she's not going to be going on ground fleet and stuff.
right. And so it's just like I wish we could have saw more of her of like the missions that she was a part of. Like in those 3 years, 3-ish years. And so
I wonder if she wasn't on that many though, because she was part of Vader's crew.
I don't know. Like I feel like that's like one of the main ships. So like I felt like it would have been more involved with things, but like I
But
don't know.
but was it like Vader was involved in things, and they were just making sure that ship didn't blow up by someone else or something? You know what I mean?
All right.
Like Vader left to go work with the Inquisitors. The Inquisitors were hunting down Jedi, and they're just on the ship. And when Vader, they're pretty much like a taxi. Like when Vader said, "Let's go here," we go here, and then we don't know what's happening. And Vader comes back in, then we leave and go here, and then we don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. So like if that's what happened, then it would make sense why she never really saw any evils by the Empire per
yeah,
se.
because she wasn't exposed to it. She
But
just knew
like
that Vader was scary.
but then like later on, like we're almost getting to like when she goes back to Jellycan, like she confesses to Thane that like there's darkness. She says there's darkness in the Empire, but it's
Mhm.
still preventing another Clone Wars type of thing. So it's like, but I feel like we didn't see instances where she saw that darkness as much as like
You wanted her
wanted
to,
to. Um,
but I was always like seeing that as in like the darkness that she was surrounded by, which was also like Vader, and how like even people on the deck were scared of him. Like people that worked with him daily were scared of him. Like
but even
he
that,
was just a
there still was
scary.
minimal. It wasn't like she was interacting with him every day though.
No,
There's only
but
a couple scenes with him, and so it's like she almost never saw him.
yeah, that's true.
But I don't know. But
You know what can also be dark, but also good though?
what's that?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Mm-hmm. It's dark color, but it's good if you
That's
like it.
that's what I hear. But if you don't like dark things, there's also light things such as tea.
Yeah, that sometimes look like Yoda.
And coincidentally, once again, our sponsor for today is Wesley Andrews Coffee and Tea out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So if you are struggling between whether the Empire is bad or good, or whether you should join the Rebel Alliance or not, maybe you should sit down with a cup of tea or coffee and think about it over and weigh the pros and cons. So let's take a little commercial break and take a listen to this ad for Wesley Andrews Coffee and Tea.
Hey everyone, Andrew here. I'm pleased to tell you that the sponsor of today's episode is Wesley Andrews Coffee and Tea. If you don't know anything about Wesley Andrews, you definitely should. They're an award-winning coffee roaster and shop in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and they make fantastic coffee. The awesome thing is that whether you live in the Twin Cities or not, you can get their coffee beans delivered straight to your door by ordering them online. They even have a subscription service that ensures you never run out of amazing coffee. If you've been looking for some new coffee to try or a way to elevate your normal coffee routine, now's your chance. Head over to wesleyandrews.cc, use the code Empire Radio, that's with a capital E and a capital R with no space at checkout, to get 15% off your first purchase of any bags of coffee or a coffee subscription. I can't think of a better deal. Get 15% off some great coffee, support a small business, and support your favorite Star Wars podcast. In the words of Emperor Palpatine, do it.
Do
Do
it.
it.
All right. Well, now I feel like the rest of the story kind of goes pretty fast. I feel like the first half was like a lot of things happened, and then like the second half was more like quicker things to the story. So,
There was a lot of building.
right. And so now we get to Hoth. Thane is on Hoth with the Rebel Alliance, and he's there hanging out with Dak, who is the gunner in Luke Skywalker's snowspeeder thing. So,
R.I.P.
So we should also mention that Sienna believes in the Force and spiritual things like that. Thane does not believe in the Force and spiritual things, and so Thane has to deal with like there's this Luke Skywalker guy who supposedly uses the Force, but he doesn't believe it. But like, I don't know. Like, I feel like how do you not like Luke is like using the Force? Like, how do you not see him use it or train or whatever
I don't
when
think
you're?
they see Luke.
I don't know. Well, he was he was just walking around in the Hoth base, like
But I think it's because he's so low ranked.
Luke.
No, Luke isn't. But Luke is high ranked. But he is so low ranked that he's just
Thane?
a background guy. You know, like
Well, yeah, but like
he's not gonna follow around with Luke. And
I don't know. I feel like
where we get to this point, like Luke and Han are like inside tauntauns right now.
oh right, but like I don't know something. I don't know. I felt like even later moving forward, like that he should have believed that Luke was doing things that were not possible without the Force. I don't know.
He gets there.
Did he though?
Yeah.
I don't think even by the end of the book he doesn't really believe in any of that stuff. Really, like he has like the very final scene, like when they meet up for the final time, like in Star Strike, he's like, maybe it was a Force processor or something like that. But like,
Yeah.
he never really believes. I don't know. But whatever. They're talking.
I think that's something that I like about the book, that it's not based around the Force like that.
Well, I know, but like, I just thought the whole time Thane interacting with Luke, like being like he's one of the main snow speeders with Luke. Like, you don't think that group of snow speeder pilots and gunners are going to be like in class together or like sharing like knowing how to like do things together? Like they had to have trained together, but it's just like Luke took out an AT-AT by taking a rope and like going up and then like destroying it from the inside. Like, I don't know. Like,
sometimes it's under your nose and you don't.
I guess.
Don't know.
I guess Palpatine was there under everyone's nose for a whole time, and no one knew. But
just saying,
he was purposely trying to hide it. Luke, I don't know what, but anyway, Thane and Dak are talking. Blah blah blah. Then the Imperials show up, and
Well, even at this point too, Fane's still not like 100% in with the Empire, like the rebels, you know.
right, I think that was something that was with, because like I don't know,
Because Deck was like talking to him, like and like praising Luke Skywalker and Han. Like, did you hear about the Death Star and like what they did to the Death Star and all this stuff? And he was like, I had some friends on the Death Star and they just killed a bunch of people. Like he was still kind of like not fully accepting that what they did was a good thing because he still was seeing it through his point of view or how he could have been on the Death Star and he could have died. Luckily, he didn't. So, like, he was like part of the Rebel Alliance, but like you said earlier, he was more part of it because he just hated the Empire. And through that time of traveling and doing these side things with his like group and smuggling, he kept seeing that was like another thing. Like when he was part of that smuggler crew, they kept going to planets and seeing all this destruction and evil that the Empire was doing, which is what made him realize that he needed to be part of this to actually help because he could actually fight and do something about it.
right. Because I think I'm going back to my notes. Like when Thane is recruited, it says it was 18 months after the Battle of Yavin, and so now that Hoth, which they say is 3 years in this book, they say it's 3 years after the Battle of Yavin. So like that's still 18 months between when he joins and when he's at Hoth. It seems like it's implying. So like I don't know, like
But I don't think Luke were. Is that also implying that Luke was there for 18 months though?
well, Luke was there from episode 4, which has been 3 years, according to this book.
They went straight to Hoth.
No, I'm saying that the time from when Thane joins the rebellion to Hoth is 18 months.
Mm,
But like I don't know.
I
It
see
seems
what
like
you're
it just
saying.
skipped 18 months of stuff that Thane was doing and what Ciena was
Yeah.
doing. Like what was happening. But then it also seems like when you're reading with the scene with Thane and Dak, it seems like it's a lot shorter. It was only like a few months or something like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll have to go back
Well,
and look.
it kind of feel it seems like he is just like showing his worth, right? Because
Yep.
like another thing in like the Rebel, he started over. Like he wasn't just like automatically a pilot. Like he was doing grunt work. He was building his allegiance to the Rebel Alliance, which is also why he wasn't fully in yet because he was still trying to get in there
Right.
until the battle happens.
So the Empire arrives, and then the scene. If you want to know the scene, go watch the Battle of Hoth from episode 5. It's the same scene, and
Thane's in one of those ships
one of those
flying
ships.
around.
And so now this I mentioned earlier how like in this book something is established but it doesn't align with things that happened in other future projects in Star Wars. So there's a big emphasis that Thane was shooting the feet of the AT-ATs because those were like the joints were like the weak points where there wasn't the armor,
Mm-hmm.
and it's implied later on, we'll get to it, how only someone who was in the Empire would know that that's a weak point. And it seemed to imply that he did this like off the top of his head in the moment, like he wasn't trained to do
Yeah.
this. He just did it on his own. But
Mm-hmm.
when we go watch Rogue One during the Battle of Scarif, when the rebels show up, they take out AT-AT and they have concentrated fire on the ankles or whatever, or the feet on the one, like they knew that this was an established like way to take out these AT-ATs.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that Rogue One takes place before Thane does this on Hoth by, according to this book, 3 years. So it's kind of like a little contradiction,
But
but
also
that person who was shooting at the feet in Rogue One might have also been from the Empire or had been trained by someone who was from the Empire who knew that
is dead now.
and is dead now. But like,
But to that point, she wrote this book before Rogue One came out, so it's not really her fault.
well, I understand that. So it's just kind of like, where was like now obviously Rogue One was being in development when this book came out.
Yeah.
But like
minor details.
those minor details that like get in and out, that whatever. So anyway, Battle Hoth happens. But
I love you so much, Jeremiah, that's kind of stuff that was probably like bothering you about this book.
Yeah, like how can Drew like this book so much? Doesn't make sense at all.
Like, how did he wasn't the only one that knew how to shoot the legs out of the walking machine.
But during the Battle of Hoth, Sienna is on one of the destroyers orbiting the planet or off in the space. And so she's not in the battle, but she's monitoring systems on her computer, analyzing the battle, things, whatever. So she's never like in any direct danger. But while Thane is doing this battle, he takes out, I think it was just one TIE fighter or something like that. And he's like, that could have been Sienna. She could have been assigned to being in a TIE fighter, and I could have killed her, and I didn't even know, and I'll never know. Like, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so
he had to like understand that there's a potential that he could kill his friend or friends.
Has the love of his life. Like, at this point, like they've already established that they were in love with each other. Like they mutually know that. And so he gets off Hoth and he jumps to their rendezvous point on the Mon Calamari ship, which we'll get to later. But what is interesting is Sienna, she, I don't know, something like she couldn't believe that the Empire lost. Like they had the advantage. Like, yeah, they disrupted everything and they took out tons of their people and stuff. But like she felt like they didn't do enough. Like they should have completely destroyed the Rebel Alliance. Like how could they have failed? And so she goes and reviews footage that was recorded by the Empire of the entire battle. And while she's watching this, she sees the snow speeder go in and like quick turn and go between the legs of the thing. Like no pilot. She's like, how could someone do that? And she's like, the only person I know who can fly like that is Thane. And the last line of that chapter was, Thane Kyrell joined the Rebel Alliance. And she figured it out just by watching the way he flew because they... Oh! A little late with that button, but... but so she figured it out just by watching the footage that he's in the Rebel Alliance, and she's just ends up being totally distraught. Can't believe it. How like terrible, like whatever, blah blah blah.
He betrayed me.
Yep, and like that's just how she figures it out. So she has to keep that to herself.
Because when they're training as kids, it was a similar move that they had to do to get through the mountains of Jellican.
Right.
So she recognized the way he rotated the ship when he did that was similar to when she was being trained.
Right.
So it like brought it all back full circle essentially.
But the thing is, like, she can't tell anyone because she already lied
that he was dead.
That he took his own life prior, like a year and a half earlier. So it's like she can't like use this information to like help the Empire defeat the Rebel Alliance or whatever. So she has to keep it to herself. Now, they jump ahead during the events of episode 5 to Bespin, which is where Jude was originally from, who was killed on the Death Star and all that stuff. She was from Bespin, and what is interesting is how the Empire has the hyperdrive disabled on the Millennium Falcon while it's parked there, and what is interesting is Sienna and Nash are the ones tasked to disabling the hyperdrive. So they actually sneak down, fly down, go to the ship, disable it, and get back to the destroyer. And so when the Millennium Falcon leaves the planet and their hyperdrive isn't working, that's because of Sienna and Nash. So it's like we never saw them in the movie, but they are the ones that did that. And so we see that whole final escape scene from the perspective of Sienna and Nash, and they're like, "Yeah, we disabled the hyperdrive. It'll be good. They're gonna capture the Millennium Falcon, blah blah blah." And then it hits the hyperspace, and they're super terrified because Vader is there, and Sienna's like, "We've always heard about these outlashes by Vader, but she's never seen it before. So she's been with him for 3 years and never seen one of these crazy scenes where he bursts of anger and kills people or whatever." And so she thinks she's about to get killed, and she's super terrified. So in that scene when he's like, "Did you disable the hyperdrive?" and Pyatt or whatever his name is, like, "Yeah, we got it done." She's literally listening to them talking just off camera, and so it's kind of interesting. She's crapping her pants right now, when the ship gets away. But Vader just turns and walks away, never does anything. So, yeah. So there's that. And so then, so we learned then, after this, we learned that Sienna, every week, gets a hollow message from his home. And so it's implied that it's not a conversation, a hollow call. It's just kind of a message, an update. So I guess, which I thought was interesting, was how much the Empire allowed its officers and whatnot to communicate with their home, their family.
It makes it seem like she's not supposed to do that, though. She's so high ranked, so she can do that, but it's not encouraged.
No, I think it's implied that everyone can do that, because I even talk about how they have recreational rooms on the Death Star or on Star Destroyers. The Empire allows for these moments of relaxation and
that's true
ability to communicate with their family, which I just thought was, I guess I never thought that the Empire would allow that, because I don't know, they know that people are rising up against and people on the planets that are the ones that are rebelling and
I just
causing
don't
issues.
think I think they're all ignorant to the fact they don't know how big these rebellions are getting. They don't realize the impact.
Well, I know, but if you don't want your people to know about these going on,
true,
it's going to be your family that's going to complain to you, and how you're going to could get turned by your family. So it's because they're we don't want you to have allegiance to your home planet. You have allegiance to the Empire. And so it was kind of why are they letting them freely get messages from back home on a regular basis? But whatever. So we see that she gets a call from her dad, or a message from her dad, and that's what we get. But then later on, it jumps ahead, and she goes to her superior officer and say, "Hey, I have not taken any time off in all 3 years I've been here, and I've accumulated 7 weeks of leave." Which, that's another thing. You get vacation time as an Imperial officer. I didn't know that. So she's like, "There is a personal matter back home, and
you get personal time, but you're not encouraged to use it.
Right. Like no one uses it,
Yes.
even though they have it. Kind of like me. Like I have vacation time, but I don't go on vacations because like, what am I gonna do? Like I haven't taken a vacation in like over 10 years. Did you know
Yeah. That's
that?
your new nickname is Cyan, but keep going.
Sienna. Okay. But so the officer's like, well, why? What's going on? And she's like, my mother is being accused of embezzling money on Jellucan and stealing money from the Empire, and she's going to be on trial, and I want to be there. And the superior officer's like, you can go, and when you return, you can report back with what happened, implying like report back, do you agree with what happened or disagree with what happened? So like if she's found guilty, are you going to agree with it or disagree with it? So it's kind of like she's obviously, you can't say I disagree with the Empire. So
Yeah.
but she goes back and her mother's obviously in jail or whatever. Her dad's by herself. Her dad's like suffering, like he's not eating or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so something established earlier in the book, which I forgot until like came up and then I didn't remember all the details, but with like her people being like the original people, like one of their traditions is of like when someone is like a family, like one of their family members is being like they're arrested or they're on trial for something, like people go and support the family during this time by like putting a flag in like their front yard type of thing to say like, we don't know what's happening. We're not saying someone's guilty or innocent, but we're just here
We
to
stand with you.
stand with you, to be like support like a community behind this family as they're going through a terrible time. And so when Sienna gets there, no flags are put in the front yard, implying that no one wants to like imply that they are supporting a family rather than supporting what the Empire does, type of thing.
And I think they also use that in spec when like someone's lost, like when someone died.
I think yeah, something like that too.
Like
Because like
the
earlier in the book,
village, the people will set off flags to like stand with the family.
right? Because like earlier in the book, like they mentioned something about that, and I didn't really like think much of it. And so then like when it happens, like I should have paid attention a little bit more. But
You get on the 11th reading. That's when you really
okay.
understand.
Now, so she goes back home and she's kind of like with her dad, making food and stuff. But like, but before like this scene where she's like with her dad and stuff, like in the previous chapter or whatever, or scene, like whatever, we find out that Thane always like reads the news reports from Jellucan, and he saw that Sienna's mother was being accused of embezzlement and stealing from the Empire. So like I was like, is he gonna like go back at all? Like whatever, blah blah blah. And so whatever, Santa's making food, soup or whatever for her dad, and it's getting late or whatever, it's dark out in the middle
Oh,
of the
you
night.
also have to stay on watch. That's like another thing. That's why
a family member has to stay awake till sunrise or something.
Yeah,
and so like if someone with a flag comes, like they're allowed to be that watch member too. If they like anyone can be at this, need someone in the household to like stay till sunset.
Which is why her dad hasn't slept in a bunch of days.
And he's also working full-time job, whatever. And so obviously he's happy that Santa's back so that she could stay up. But in the middle of the night, a ridge crawler, I think is what they called it. Like there's kind of like a vehicle used to like traverse the mountains that they live in, arrives, and someone goes and puts a flag in the front yard, and Santa opens the door to see who it was, and it was Thane. He left the rebellion to go support Santa's family, not knowing that Santa was going to be there, but maybe thinking that maybe she could be if she knew what was happening. And as like the second waiver, like he's not part of that tradition, so like he had to like get a specific kind of flag that was like a red flag, and like to show that he's not he's one of the second waivers. And so he's like, I remember Sienna like telling me about this when we were kids, and I think I got it right, like a red flag, right? And the dad's like, yep, you got that right, son, type of thing. And Thane's like, well, what more can I do? And the dad's like, your presence is enough. Like, thank you for standing with us. You're the only one. And he can sense the awkwardness in the room. So he's like, I'm going to bed. You guys can talk, type of thing. And they argue. And then when it's sunrise, they like sneak out and go flying. So I was surprised that they were allowed to do that. Like I thought when they went flying, TIE fighters were going to show up and like escort them back, and then Santa was going to get in trouble or something. But
yeah, they went to his parents' house, who he hasn't talked to in years.
Right.
He
and
has like
never
no
even
interest.
went back.
They snuck in and stole the ship essentially from his parents.
Yep, the one that they flew as children, and so it was like riding a bike. They were flying through the mountains and doing their zigzags and understanding each other like perfectly. Like they never skipped a beat. And they get back, and then it's like I think it was like storming out or something at one point, and they're like stuck in like the hangar or whatever. And then they
went to their cave,
went back to their fortress, and Thane was like, "Man, after all these years, it's pretty clean in here." And she's like, "I came back a couple days ago, and I straightened up a little bit." Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's funny. And then they have another sleepover, and they argue again, and then they part ways. And so,
but they talked about how like they're trying to figure out why he was justifying himself to be part of the rebels, and it was actually really intense arguments. And
yep. And so, but like they still loved each other no matter what, like whatever. And so then he leaves. He was just there for that one day, and he sneaks back to go through. He's like, I gotta go quick because I have to get to a rendezvous point before the Rebel Alliance changes another rendezvous point. So if I miss this, then I gotta like somehow find access to the Rebel Alliance again, and then that's almost impossible. So he's like, I gotta go. So he goes and makes it back, but then the trial for the mother happens, and so Santa's there in the like the public seating to watch the trial, and like she's basically like, all this evidence is nonsense. Like it's no one here actually believes this evidence. It's clearly fabricated. It's clearly one of the like the officer who was like acting as like the governor of the planet or whatever was the one stealing all this money, but like framed Santa's mother. And so Santa's mother's found guilty, and she is sentenced to like 5 years hard labor in the mines, even though they have robots and droids that can do the mining. It's just like that.
like she finally understood like how messed up this was.
But she also said this is just one instance. Like this is this one corrupt Imperial officer that is doing this. This is not a reflection of the Empire. But like it was still like.
But also mentioning how messed up the planet is and how polluted the planet is now compared to when they were kids. And
right.
They talk about that too.
The planet is completely different. Like the clothing, like you couldn't tell the difference between the the
The
second
first wave.
waivers and the first waivers, like the plant, like the buildings were different. Like the huts that they used to build are no longer just like concrete huts or whatever. And um, but so Sienna. So I think one of the things that Sienna and Thane were talking about was like Thane was like, they're testing you. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
not like implying that this whole trial is a setup so that they can test you, knowing that you're going to go back and they're going to see where your loyalties are. And so she gets back, reports to her superior officer that uh, she said the trial was fair, the evidence was clear, my mother was guilty, and apparently like, there was like she like did something, and then the officer, her superior, like stared at her like, I know you're lying to me, but you're saying the right thing. And he's like, but good work. There might be a promotion for you in the future. And so then it implies that it was a test, that they just set this whole thing up to see if Sienna would align with her family or with the Empire, and she didn't align with the Empire, and she got promoted to commander. And so she's like you got like admiral and commander and one other one are like the top three of like the main officers. So she actually got to like now into like top secret stuff and like information that no one else gets information to. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that. Um, and so then it kind of now things start to speed up a little bit. We're in episode 6 time. Now they imply it's only been like a few months since Hoth when episode 6 happens, which I think is a stretch with the timeline because
It's longer than that for sure.
it's implied it's 2 years between each movie.
Mm-hmm.
So, but whatever. But did we? Okay, I'm forgetting this detail from episode 6, but there's a scene in this book where the Imperial fleet gathers at the Hudala system. Is that mentioned in episode 6? Because
I think so.
like
I think it
most of
is.
the Imperial fleet is gathered and in one spot to like show the Empire or the Emperor the size and power. But like it's also set up so that the Rebel Alliance could get the information that this is happening, so they could see it. Because like we know that the battle at Endor was a trap. It's a trap. Like we get that, but like um,
No, they don't mention this before. I don't think.
cause, I don't know, because it seems like they're implying that um, like how did they like the information about the second Death Star was like I was confused, like because like in episode 6, it's like many Bothans died for this information,
Yeah.
but like that wasn't mentioned. But like this Hadala system thing was mentioned, and it's kind of like somehow like the Rebel Alliance got information about the second Death Star. I don't know if I was kind of confused on that. Um, because it was implying that this like Hadala system mass like accumulation gathering was part of the information leaked in for the bigger trap story. But I don't know. I was kind of confused by that. But the Rebel Alliance gets wind of this gathering and they send a squad of X-Wings to go spy. And one of those pilots is Thane, obviously. They got to have him in there. And also, we should say that one of the friends, one of the roommates of Sienna, she also defected and joined the Rebel Alliance. So she's in this squad too, Kindy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Kendi?
Mm-hmm.
Is it I or E? Kendi or Kindy?
The first one.
Kendi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's there, and she like escaped to the Rebel Alliance with like a larger group of Imperial members at one time that she was
Yeah.
with, which is kind of cool. Like, it'd been cool to see more details of that. But scenes are from the perspective of Ciena and Thane, not from other characters, so we don't get to see those details. But the Rebel Alliance, they like go into the system, and it's like they hide in the debris of the rings of this planet, like way far off, so they can just like observe, just to see what happens. And then they're supposed to get information and then leave right away. But at the same time, Sienna is called in by her superior officer. You know, hey, we got a special mission for you. There's something out in those rings we picked up. It could just be some regular civilian ships or whatever, but we need you to go out there and investigate. And so, all right, cool. And then Sienna is like told to stay back, and the guy's like, we got more information. They're Rebel Alliance people, and what we need you to do is let at least one of the ships escape. And so, like, because it's implying that we want them to report back to the Rebel Alliance to see how big we really are and how powerful we really are. And like, if you think you can stop us, you can't, type of thing. And so, she goes out there with her squad, and the X-Wing's like, oh crap, they're coming. We got to fight back. And then Thane, over like a comm that's like connected to like an open comm, says something to the ties, and Nash, who's also one of the pilots, is like, Thane Kyrell, you're alive? And like, Sienna's not saying anything.
Yeah, because she's in shock that he's out there.
But like, and so Thane thinks it's just Nash and other general pilots. So he doesn't know, but they start fighting each other, and
because he doesn't know that they're supposed to let one go.
Right. So Ciena knows that Thane is there because she heard the message, but she's not saying anything. But she has to figure out how to let some survive, at least one survive, and also try and make sure that Thane survives.
Yes.
So Thane is being chased by Nash, and Nash
is like, you're a traitor.
He's infuriated.
Yes.
And he goes crazy trying to kill Thane, and then Santa's like, crap. So she like gets between Thane and Nash, and she tries like shoot Thane to make it look like she's trying to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Blah blah blah. And I think those 4 of the 5 X-Wings were able to escape. And so the mission is done. They go back, and Ciena thinks that her cover is blown in a sense that like she lied. But Thane is like, man, you hate him more than me. You try to get to kill yourself. I'm like, oh gosh, Nash, so stupid. So basically, Sienna is like, whew, that was a close one. I almost got my lie uncovered. And so then like her whole squad gets yelled at by a command, and then like it's done, and then her spirit like nods at her at the end, like good job type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So dodged a bullet there.
Well, but didn't she did talk though. She said something because he knew that it was her, because then on his perspective when they landed, she came up, wait, was that your Ciena?
Oh yeah. I can't. Yeah, something like that. What did she say something, or did he figure it out by her flying?
No, she said something.
Okay. I do remember that because everyone was like mad that he's dating an Imperial officer, like his girlfriend is an Imperial officer. People are mad, and then like he's like, no, the Sienna I know is still in there. She's still there. She's not fully taken over. And so then when they see that she saves his life.
Oh, because when he came back from her planet, when he came back to the Rebel Alliance, they were questioning where he went and was saying like, you are free to go whenever you want.
Right.
But Like,
he confesses, I was with an Imperial officer.
yes.
And everyone was pissed. Like, how do we know she didn't put a tracker on you? Blah, blah, blah. And
Yep.
you can't be, like, fighting the Imperials and then having sleepovers. Like, you blah, blah, blah. Like, and so then when
Yes.
he returns, they're like, oh, she is good because she saved your life.
Yeah, pretty much. They're like, oh, is that your Sienna? And he said, yes.
Like, heck yeah, she is. And, like, so whatever. And so then, Sienna, she gets introduced to the second Death Star. She sees the second Death Star and she's completely upset.
She's
Like,
pissed off.
she's mad about it. Like, why
What's
would
the point
you,
of this now?
like, now you do it so you can destroy more planets on purpose. It wasn't just like a one-time show with the first Death Star to like stop the like. Now this is like a threat to actually continue destroying planets.
Mm-hmm.
And she's super distraught about it and angry about it. And then, like, the Battle of Endor happens. And it's kind of like you just get more back and forth between Sienna. She's put in a TIE fighter with like hundreds of TIEs. And then Thane, he's going into battle. And so it's kind of like back and forth. And they're both like not wanting to kill each other's person. And like, but they never see each other. Santa's like, I wonder if I'm going to recognize his flying.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really anything. And then the Death Star 2 is destroyed. A bunch of ships are destroyed. And so, like, there wasn't really much in this battle that was, like, really intriguing. Like, because we know what happens, but, like, most of what we see in the movie is this Luke and Vader type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, this just goes back and forth their perspective on, like, certain things that happened and things that they destroyed and shot down and stuff. So after the battle is done, she's like, I gotta get back to a ship and get out of here, type of thing. And because her ship's damaged, right? A little bit or
I
something.
think so, yeah.
So she's trying to get back to a remaining ship that wasn't blown up or damaged by the explosion of the second Death Star. And she gets in a ship, random ship that docking bay, and like crash lands in there. And she gets impaled by a metal shard. And it destroys her liver completely, destroys it. And so, like, this is the end of episode 6, like the fall of the Empire. And then it kind of gives more like information for that year between the fall of the Empire and the Battle of Jakku, which is like the final last stand of the Empire. And so Sienna, she goes into surgery, and apparently they're like, well, our technology is so great with medical advancement, but it can't replace a liver. And so but like with a Bacta tank, we can grow your liver, but it takes like a year to do. So she's basically in a med bay for a year trying to recover in hiding while this ship is in hiding, which is just like a lot of time that ship is not doing anything. It's just in hiding. And so that's happening. Thane, he's still an X-Wing pilot. He's taken out remnants of Imperial things. Like, he's on Naboo, hanging out on Naboo while like they take out some. Like, everyone keeps trying to take Naboo back. This is like the third time, and they keep losing. So he's just kind of doing his thing, but he's also like taking like the rituals from Jalukan that Sienna taught him about her people, like of mourning. And he's just kind of going through this mourning process in a very traditional spiritual way.
Mm-hmm.
Not really believing in it, but just doing it to like do it for her in a sense. And so that's happening. And in about that year time,
Because he
Sienna,
assumes that she's dead.
Right, and he's fine with it. Like he's going through that process and he's fine with it. And then Sienna completely recovers, and she is given the title of captain of her own Star Destroyer because, well, they don't got people, but the guy's like it was a Grand Moff gave her that. He's like, basically, we don't got anyone else because we're kind of short-handed. So you get your own Star Destroyer to lead. And Nash Windrider's like, yeah, she's the best. And then she's like, I knew her like this whole time. Like I never gave up on her. Like he's happy for her, whatever. So
He
then
kind of falls in love with her.
Yeah, he tried to get her
at
number earlier, and she said no. he got denied. He tried to shoot his shot, and she's like, no, sorry. Like, okay, no problem. And that was that for that attempt. But we get to the Battle of Jakku, the last stand of the Empire. So if you want more information about that, go play Star Wars Battlefront 2. And so the Rebel Alliance / the New Republic are fighting against this remnant of the Empire, and they're kind of like trying to take over board ships and like steal them back. Because apparently there's been times where like entire crews like in the middle of a battle would like turn on their captain and like help the Alliance like fight the other ships, Imperial ships that they were with, and like they're like, we just gotta get on board the ships and like turn the crew or whatever, or take over the crew or whatever. And so that happens now. And then something that happened earlier in the book, when they were in the academy, like they're given the task of like, what would you do if you're captain of a Star Destroyer or any ship really that gets boarded by the Rebel Alliance? And it's like different ways to do self-destruct and
go down with your ship, essentially.
And so Sienna, she like is the one that gives the correct answer of like whatever. And so I forgot about that until I'm going through these chapters, and I'm like, oh crap, this is like flashing back to like the scenario that she did like in a classroom. She now has to like actually deal with. So her crew, they're trying to like fight the battle, whatever, do their thing. They're losing pretty bad. Then they get boarded by Rebel people, and kind of similar to like from Skeleton Crew, where like they just like shoot into like they ram into the ship and it like punctures a hole and it's kind of like bored through, and so they get boarded, and their thing is like, well, we got to disable the self-destruct right away. So that's like their goal, to like not die and then also not let the self-destruct happen. So they're doing that, and Sienna's like, oh crap, we got to self-destruct. I'm gonna push the button and it'll give people time to evacuate. And then she pushes the button and nothing happens. She's like, oh crap, we can't self-destruct. I'll have to do something manually, where she has to crash the ship into Jakku. But she gives her crew time to like, leave. You got 10 minutes to get on an escape pod and get out of here. So everyone leaves. She locks herself in the bridge.
She says it's over the PA system.
Right, which she didn't have to do. Like, that's not what was protocol, but she did it anyway to like save her people. And so Thane, he's realizing what's happening because he hears the message, and he hears that it's Sienna over the loudspeaker, the PA system. And she's
what
like,
are the odds?
Yep. And this is when he actually starts to believe, oh, maybe the Force is, because she keeps saying the Force brings us back together over and over again. And he's like, I don't believe that. And now this happens. Like, oh, maybe the Force is real.
Because he thought she was dead.
Right. And so he's making his way to the bridge, but she like did like the emergency lockdown. So like you can't get in unless you have the special code to get in. but only that person would know what that code is. And he's like, what would it be? What would it be? And he says,
Look through my eyes.
look through my eyes, which was her line. And the door opens up and she can't believe it. Oh no, how did the door open? And she turns and it's them. And he's like, I'm here to rescue you. And she's like, no, I'm here to crash the ship. This is how I can stay faithful to my oath, but I can also escape the Empire at the same time by dying. And like this is how like she wants to go out in honor.
Yeah, because she knows at this point that the Empire is bad, but she doesn't want to
break her oath. And so like she's telling Thane, just go get an escape pod and leave. I'm crashing the ship. And he's like, no, I am here to save you. So they're both trying to save each other.
Like straight up fighting at this point.
So like she wants him to get an escape pod to save him. He wants to like take her with. And then they just start actually physically fighting each other, punching each other, tackling each other as the ship is crashing into the planet. It's already been overtaken.
You see the cover of the book is literally that ship crashing into.
Yeah, which planet. I didn't even realize until after, because I don't read it with the cover on. I always take the sleeves off. And then like I finished the book and like I look at the cover again, like looked at the thumbnail, and I was like, oh, that's the ship. And so they're fighting each other, like punching each other in the face, and like he's like, I never thought I would never hit Sienna, but I got to hit her now to like save her life. And so they're fighting each other, and like his blaster was like the only blaster that got knocked out earlier in the fight to like stun, and like he finally gets his, because they're crashing, so obviously like they're like at an angle, they're like everything's falling over, falling in the walls. He finally gets the gun back, switches it to stun, and stuns Sienna. But like the way she fell, like he thought that he accidentally shot her, and like without the stun, I actually almost thought that he did too.
Dude, imagine
that would have been so bad. So then they're past the point of like no return. Like
it's on fire. Like
everything's melting. Like he's like, I don't even think that these escape pods can launch, and if they do, like we're probably gonna burn to death. But he gets into escape pod with her last second. It shoots out. It still works. They crash land on Jakku. And he's like, hey, we're alive. But she's like knocked out. Or still stunned out. And we're fine. And they're like stuck in the sand. And then, but we got the beacon and the Republic will find us. They open up the thing. They save them. And then her limp body is put in handcuffs.
Yep.
He's like, oh yeah, because if you're an admiral, commander, or captain, you are then put on trial for war crimes. So like because she's a captain, she falls into that category. And he's like, oh dang.
She totally forgot all about that.
Forgot about that. Sorry, babe.
My bad.
And so that's what happens. She gets arrested. She ends up going into a prison cell, waiting for like a trial type thing. And like the last chapter is like mostly them talking to each other through a jail
cell,
like laser wall thing. And so she's basically has no hope. Like, I'm going to be in prison for the rest of my life. But he's like, well, I still have hope. Like, you could get a lenient sentence if you just kind of like give him information. And like, we need people to like rebuild the galaxy anyway. Like, we need people like you to, I forget how exactly he says it, but like they're giving deals to like certain people for information. And that's a hope for you that maybe you can still have freedom someday. But she doesn't believe that. But it's just kind of like them looking at each other and touching hands through the laser thing. And the one thing I forgot to mention, like the second time that they met, like when it was like the trial of the mother.
Mhm.
Like she's like, I still have faith in the Empire, but he says, but did they keep faith? Did they keep faith? Like you're keeping your end of the bargain, but is the Empire doing their
Their
part of
end
the
of the
bargain?
yeah.
Which I think was like a thing that I think could have been pushed better. Like, well, because they're not holding up their end of the deal, your oath
Like, why
is
are you still holding yours?
it's negated. Like you're no longer obligated. Kind of like a legal contract. Like if you break an NDA or something like that, then the contract is void, and then they don't have to
Yeah.
pay you, type of thing. But that was something I forgot to mention. But yeah, so they're just kind of had a long conversation, and it kind of ends with them not knowing what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then the last chapter or last section or whatever is Nash Windrider is alive, and he is on a ship in some system where a bunch of other Imperial ships are still gathering resources and hiding because they're like behind like a nebula. It's kind of like a skeleton crew. Like they're in a hidden area that can't be scanned or whatever. And also on this ship is Delvin Kyrell,
Mhm.
and Nash is basically like, I can manipulate Delvin because he's lame and he's faithful to the Empire still and to me. And Nash is like, I'm just waiting for the Empire to rise again and come back with a vengeance. And that's how it ends, on a big, huge cliffhanger, and there's no sequel. So
Yeah.
that's the end of the book.
It's a good
And
book.
put to your hand clap cheer thing. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the book. Now, I think it would be cool, like I mentioned earlier, that as the Imperial remnants are like trying to like still like build themselves up in the Mandoverse, like
If
we
get
could
him.
see Nash Windrider in a future Mandoverse thing.
If Disney didn't forget about this book,
Wish they could have. I don't know, but
I mean, it's so old.
right,
But
because the Mandoverse starts 5 years after the fall of the Empire, and so like we hear in there that the New Republic has been taking out the remnants and other ships this whole time. So maybe at some point, Nash Rider's group of Imperial fleet ships did attack at some point before the Mandoverse, and they were taken out.
it would have
But
been cool if he was part of like that panel that
yeah,
Moff Gideon was talking to.
yeah,
Like we just didn't know. But like at the same time, it's like his character or the characters in this book aren't really like, no one else would know that. Like they're like,
right.
not Captain Nash Windrider, and they would not care. But
But
meanwhile, I'd be screaming in the background like for
right, it
him.
would be cool. So then, at least now that if they do that, I'll be able to like catch that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be like the Leonardo DiCaprio like whistle point thing at the TV.
Yeah.
But it would be cool to get a conclusion more, I guess. Like even like Sienna and Thane, they could come back. Like if she
They had
got
like Thane like flying ships around with his
right,
best friend Sienna. Like if they were just like a couple who just flew around.
that'd be cool. It'd be cool to see them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad you enjoyed parts of it.
Yep, except for that Star Wars math, but
Sure, but I'll take that.
but I need to apologize for putting this book off for so long.
Thank you.
We
Yeah.
could have read it earlier, and I would have been happy with it, but
The whole time you were hating on it, thinking it was just so stupid.
because you
love
kept saying it was a
story.
love story, and I'm like, I don't care about a love story, but like I said, they did this love story in a convincing way that was actually like
It was good.
good. It wasn't just there for whatever, like some stupid just inserting it in there for no reason. So
It made sense because they developed a story with these kids, and like you get through half the book and they finally like touch hands. You know what I mean? Like it's not like it's a dress like these two people are in love like the
Right.
other Jedi thing where it's like just
Right.
lame. Like it
Right.
actually matters. So if you haven't read it and you listen to the whole thing, I still recommend you reading it because it's still a really good book.
As long as you're okay with some not so family friendly scenes that
If you can watch Deadpool, you'll be good. You can
oh
read this
gosh.
book.
The most worst movie to like have.
Try to like think of a movie that they could watch that they
Yep.
probably watched that. Ask
If you
your
could
parents.
watch this with your mother or read this with your mother, then sorry, if you could watch Deadpool with your mother, you can read this
You
book.
can definitely read this book. Definitely. 100%. No issues there. But yeah. Either way, our breakdown would help you out. So
Yep. Well, anything else, Drew, on Lost Stars?
no, I'm kind of sad. What was our old like regular Jerica?
Jarek. Oh, yeah, she read this book. I forgot about that.
She loved the Jerica. Yes. Shout out to
Jerica, what are you
if
doing with
you're-
your life? We haven't heard
if
from you in
you're-
a long
We haven't
time.
heard from you in like a year.
I got a messenger like on Instagram
Yeah, you gotta.
or Discord. She's still in the Discord, but she hasn't like said anything in a while. So I don't know if she's really active.
If you're listening to this, Jerica, hello there, and also Jeremiah liked it, so we won.
Oh, whatever.
Because me and her have been trying to get you to read this book for years.
All right. Well, we might as well transition over to everyone's favorite time of every episode, voicemail time.
It's voicemail time.
All right. Well, we just have one voicemail today, but it's the coup d'etat verse with Garrett. So last week he met up with some survivors from the destroyed ship that crash landed on Dakar, and he's still trying to figure out what to do because the First Order left him earlier. So tons going on. Let's see what else is going on in the story. Let's go.
Hey Empire Radio, it's Garrett. If you're receiving this, that means I've discovered a new ability. I'm currently attempting to send you this message through the Force. My troops and I have been captured, and I need your help to relay some information to the First Order. I would send it to them directly, but Empire Radio is the only frequency I know by heart. With this message, you should be receiving an image that I created in my mind. It's the layout of this Resistance base. If you can get it to the First Order, I should be able to tune in through the radio waves tonight to hear you guys, and you can tell me what they said their plan is for getting us out or taking over this base. I also wanted to ask you guys, what's your favorite Star Wars memory? I still remember when I was 8 and me and my cousins were just playing Star Wars, coming up with our own little storylines and fighting with those retractable plastic lightsabers. I still dread the thought of getting hit in the finger with those. Maybe Star Wars should make some lightsabers with handguards.
All right. Well, thank you, Garrett. So he sent us a message through the Force to relay to the First Order to see if they're going to come back and rescue him. So Drew and I did hear back from the First Order, and there is a problem. They are facing some resistance from the Grand Gungan army led by Boss Nass.
Wait, wrong button.
So I don't know what the deal is with the Gungans fighting against the First Order, but I don't know if that means that the First Order is going to get defeated and then the Grand Gungan army is going to come after you and take you out, or if the First Order is going to destroy the Grand Gungan army and Boss Nass first. I don't know how it's going to play in, but they told us to relay that. They're a little delayed, but they hope to get back to the car as fast as possible to rescue you guys and take out the resistance base there. But Garrett also had a question. Our favorite Star Wars memories.
I would say one of my favorite Star Wars memories, besides reading this book for the first time, solid memory. Another one would probably be the first time I watched Star Wars, which I remember because that was when I was being babysat by a family because my younger brother was being born in the hospital. And one of the kids, I've told this story before, but if you guys haven't heard it or knew, one of the kids in that family was named Luke. So like it kind of like was stuck in my mind, and also it's because my youngest brother was being born that day. So like we were able to watch it, even though my parents probably wouldn't have let me watch it at that age, but because we were getting babysit, they couldn't say anything. And so I remember that was like the day that I like fell in love with Star Wars, and I wanted all the toys because he had a bunch of all those toys, and no lightsabers that you can fling out and stuff like that. So then after that, I remember we slowly started buying used toys and stuff, and I still have the Ewok Village, the original Ewok Village, and we used to play with that. So yeah.
Fun.
Also, yeah, they do need to make guards because Miles hit me the other day with our lightsabers, and he actually hit Steph on the face the other day
Oh boy.
because me and him were playing too rough, and Steph was like, and he was like, oh, "Sorry, mom," and then started trying to fight me again. I was like, "We're just gonna look past this, I think." So
A Star Wars memory for me, I don't know. It's kind of hard because if you remember my Star Wars story, like, yeah, I watched Star Wars as a kid and stuff, but like, it wasn't until Disney took over that like I revamped my things. Like any memory I have is really mainly as an adult. So like I think probably that dark saber reveal, season 1
I
of
was
Mando.
there.
Drew and I were freaking out on the couch watching that
Mhm.
night that it premiered. That was pretty cool.
That was a fun moment.
I think the Darth Maul
I was gonna say
reveal
the Maul and Solo.
that was a crazy.
Spoiler for Grace if she's listening, because
Or Maria.
I don't didn't. Oh, that Maria was yes, Maria.
Spoilers.
Dang it, my bad. She's probably listening to this episode.
She's probably not listening to this book review, but I don't know. Those are big ones, but like I don't know. I think trailers are always cool. When
I still remember when I messaged you on Facebook when it was slow at the coffee shop. I was writing to you about how we should start a Star Wars podcast,
for the
and
Mandalorian,
you were hesitant.
all I said was I could like join in a few episodes or something like that.
5 years later, here you are.
Well, longer than that because we did that before Empire Radio.
True.
So that's like 6 years ago. I would have to go back on Facebook and like
We got to figure that out.
scroll. I did
Before
go back
next
and
week.
look because remember you told me that like I didn't want to do it. I'm like that's not true, and I went back and I was like I said I can commit to like a few episodes, but like I didn't really want to do the whole thing, and now that plus 300 episodes later, here I am,
and here we are.
So
The best Star Wars community on the internet.
So I don't know. I bet if we go to Star Wars Celebration next year, if it's in the United States, 2026, that'll probably be a fun.
That would be a dope memory for sure.
I just want to know. I'm more excited to know where it's going to be next year than anything that's going to happen this year at Star Wars Celebration.
Just so like you can start planning and budgeting.
Yeah, because then like we can actually start like promoting that as like a fan meetup too.
Oh, we're going.
Just be in Minneapolis, okay? Like
It's not gonna happen.
that'd be we hosted the Super Bowl weekend host Star Wars celebration. Like,
not gonna happen. It's good if it's in Chicago. That'd be the best for you.
but they're not gonna do it. It's gonna be either Florida or Anaheim.
It's probably gonna be Anaheim or Florida, like Orlando, which would be cool.
They need to switch it up and put it in a new city though. For the United
New
States.
York.
No, I would hate New York.
I would
dude.
hate that too. No offense if you're listening from New York.
Like maybe like something in Texas, like Dallas or Houston or Austin. Something like that would be cool. Or St. Louis, maybe.
The only thing is if it's in Anaheim or in Orlando, you can also go to Galaxy's Edge for your first time.
Gosh, dang it. I don't want to do that.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't, because it's going to cost so much money, and then I'm going to have to get a Saber, and I'm like,
he's going to have to.
Have to make a
yes,
Saber.
You are. You're going to have to. And I'll make my first one with you at the same time. Even though I'm going to Galaxy's Edge probably in like October. For Miles' golden birthday. We're going back to Disney.
So you're going to Disney. You're not doing it for his birthday. Just as your excuse.
No, he wants to go.
You're like Sienna. You're just justifying other things.
My inner Sienna is coming out. No, because we told him like, "Hey, Miles, do you want to go to Disney for your birthday?" He's like, "Yeah, I want to go to Disney Plus." He calls it Disney Plus. It's so funny. So he's like, "Yeah, I want to go back to Disney Plus." And then we're like, "Yeah, for your golden birthday." So, and he's like, he'll ask us like every weekend, "Are we going Disney Plus for my birthday?" Boy, your birthday's in September. You gotta calm down. You got a long time before your birthday. But
wait, what is so he was born on
the 4th,
September 4th?
Mm-hmm.
Why did I think it was later in September? I know your birthday's late in September, but
mine's the 29th. He was supposed to be the 14th, but he was 10 days early.
I don't know. For some reason, I thought he was like closer to your birthday, but
no, he's like 2 weeks before my birthday.
All right,
it's his golden birthday.
All right, Garrett. Well, thank you for your voicemail, but this is like one of the longest episodes we've had in a long time,
and it was a good one. So tune in, listen, watch.
But
also late as heck.
Yeah, because this is a curveball. It's almost 2:00 in the morning. Recording this, I'm falling asleep,
which is why Jericho couldn't think of your name right away. Because
now I know how Grace feels when it's like she's recording.
Grace is on our timeline though.
Yeah, but she goes to bed by like before 9. I feel like we love you, Grace, but you go to bed super early. If you're listening, I told her after I finished reading this book, like, hey, I think you'd actually really like this book. Like,
she's never read it.
No. Because remember, she was going to do it, but then she...
Oh, I thought she already read it.
She bought the book, like, right after her interview that we had with her, like, because you said it was the best book. She bought it, but she never read it. And then she was going to read it for tonight, but then she decided she didn't have time, but she never read it. But I told her, like, hey, it has a lot of good toxic love, just like you love. So read it. I think you'd actually really like it.
I think she'll love it.
Yeah. So hopefully she'll read it, and we'll tell her to send us a voicemail or something. But yes, if you want to get connected with Empire Radio, more than just listening,
especially for next week.
For next week,
voicemails.
We'd love to hear from you. So in the description, click the links.co/Empire Radio. Links spelled with 2 I's. Grab that, and you can find everything Empire Radio related: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch for live streams. Join the Discord. There's a link to send voicemails. We'd love to hear a voicemail, especially next week. We want to celebrate our 5-year 300th episode, so go send us a voicemail. I'm now got to keep fan email, and then needlesslynerdy.com, which is an entertainment network that we're a part of. So go check that out for more nerdy content. I think that's everything.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's going to be a while before another book review. It's not going to be probably till like July. So that's pretty sad. I like doing
Do we
books.
already have one?
It'll be the final book of the High Republic, book 6. That's coming out in June.
But also, if you guys have book recommendations that we haven't read yet, that you guys think we should send those in too for future content.
Yeah.
Not that we'll get to it anytime soon because we're kind of booked out, but we still want to know.
We need content, and there's tons of Star Wars books that we haven't read yet. So
Yes,
I'm excited
Send
for whatever
'em.
we read. But you've been listening to another Valentine's Day-tastic episode of Empire Radio. I'm Jeremiah.
I'm Drew.
And may the Force be with you.
Always.